Welcome to Unknown Kazakhstan. My name is Daniel Glumov and I'm a discovery hunter. Climbing up to the very top in order to plunge to the very bottom. Reeling up hundreds of kilometers in order to wind off hundreds of years. The Unknown KZ crew already has a trace of sensational discoveries behind it, shared by self-sacrificing scientists and desperate travelers, who will once again subject riddles and secrets to the glare of truth. Watch right now. Today in our program: what appeared in Europe later than in Southern Kazakhstan? How to read the history of the city on the walls of excavations? How much does it cost to build a medieval city?
Приветствую, друзья! Я ищу древние монеты. Как сделал бы...
I salute you, my friends. I'm looking for ancient coins, as any curious, greedy and meticulous tourist on this ground would do. And it is difficult to do it, but it's easy to find ceramics, perhaps Iranian, Chinese or Indian. There is a plenty of this stuff here, since I'm near the greatest city of the Middle Ages in Central Asia, Otra.
Величайшего города Средней Азии средних веков. Отра.
For a long time, Otra was in desolation and oblivion, and it would be completely lost if in 1969 archaeologists did not begin their research. So they managed to discover and understand how medieval baths, mosques and residential blocks looked like, to get an idea of how the main city gate looks like. And now Otra is getting its new construction. Live restoration begins here. Specialists are trying to restore the medieval appearance of Otra. But won't we miss any nuances, because the city itself began to exist before the Middle Ages? Let's take a closer look. Let's try today to cut through the Otra fortress like a cake and look at all numerous cultural layers. In fact, we know that the city collapsed and was rebuilt more than once, and this couldn't pass without a trace. When did Otra appear? How is this being recorded? What is known about how it began? At the end of 1969, the first stratigraphic exploring pit was laid here, which cut through all the main layers, beginning from the 18th century, and the lower part, near the fortress wall, was fixed by materials, according to ceramic finds, somewhere around the 3rd century. Below there is a layer of ash where ceramics were not found, but there was a large layer of ash. Based on this, it is believed that the city originated in the 1st century AD. Let's call this time the foundation of the oldest legendary city. What attracted the first settlers on this piece of land? Naturally, the settlement was formed due to the agriculture being produced here. An irrigated agriculture, a sedentary agricultural form of life that could not arise here without water. The first people who came here could not predict the fate of the legendary city to their settlement, although they were counting on dividends from this steppe life. Do not forget that by that time in this area, the Great Silk Road was beating with all its charms and horrors. There is the steppe nearby where nomads used to live that constantly raided sedentary agricultural people. They robbed them and left. Because of this, people began to build fortress walls. With the development of the Great Silk Road, caravans wanted security. Is it known when the walls took the first siege? When the earliest siege happened, when the city became interesting for raids and robbery. On the stratigraphic exploring pit, which cut through the layers from the 8th to the 1st centuries, the earliest layers of destruction are associated with the 8th century. There's simple wind sand there, and it is felt. People's life leaves a completely different layer, and now the flows, and everything says that the city remained destroyed in this period. This is due to the conquest of the Arabs and the Muslims that overtook the area. According to archaeologists, much has changed in Otra in the 10th century.
10-12 видимо город разросся.
We see that the city has grown in 10th, 12th centuries, and it became necessary to surround the entire suburb with a wall. Actually, it was impossible to live without a wall in the Middle Ages. Therefore, everyone tried to live behind the wall. Endless wars, sectarian wars, led to the fact that the city must necessarily be fortified.
Город должен быть обязательно укрепленным.
Это крепостная стена. Крепостная стена северной части городища Шахристан.
This is the fortress wall of the northern part of the city, Shakristan. Here a fortified wall, a tower and a rarity. A back door was first revealed.
Впервые найден такой, как сказать, черный ход. Сегодня видно, что
It is evident in the dome that the thickness of the wall is more than 1.5 meters here. It gets thicker to the bottom. The size of bricks is 50 by 30 by 10 centimeters. These are very thick and rock-solid bricks. Apparently, walls of the city became thicker in proportion to the thickness of the wallets of local residents, merchants and sellers. Townspeople began to look differently at what is used in everyday life inside and outside the doors of their houses.
В 10-12 веках на городище Атрар наступает его...
In the 10th, 12th centuries, the fortress of Otrar meets its main flourishing period in the Karakhanid epoch. Palaces, mosques and baths, as well as the sewage system, appeared on the territory of Otrar.
Появляется канализационная система.
By the way, on the territory of residential quarters of that time, such strange objects were also found. And here, dear experts, I have a question for you. What is it? Whatever answer you give, the point of view of archaeologists is this. Excavations showed that in the houses of well-to-do people, in bathrooms, there were toilet bowls. Everyone knows that at the same time, a crucial, fatal moment for the city has come.
Караханидский период, расцвет городища.
During the Karakhanid epoch, the heyday of the settlement ends with the invasion of the Mongolian. After destruction, the city gets restored relatively quickly. Here the so-called Mongolian period is being fixed.
Фиксируем, называется так называемый монгольский период.
Здесь образовалась новая империя.
Here a new empire has been formed, the Mongols. They were against the construction of fortress walls in order to keep Taraz in subjection. On the other hand, was a strong state power which could ensure the safety of cities without any walls.
Крепостных стен могла обеспечить безопасность городов.
The reign of the Mongols in Otrar has been little studied so far, so there is almost nothing to say about what the Mongols brought to its urban culture. But after the collapse of the Golden Horde, golden times have come to Otrar.
Вот именно вот эти стены, вот эти кирпичи, которые видим.
It is these walls, these bricks that we see which date back to the 14th century, the Timurid epoch, the second flourishing period after the Karakhanid era. The wall was conical. It narrowed to a meter or meter and a half to the top, and from below it expanded to 3 to 4 meters, and below it could have a thickness of 7 to 8 meters.
Там 3-4 метра, а еще ниже она и могла иметь толщину и 7-8 метров. Сейчас мы находимся на территории мечети 14 века.
Now we are at the territory of a mosque of the 14th century. We stand before the miqab, the part that is present in every mosque. It indicates where to the faithful should spend their namaz. Here are the remains of columns and towers, which formed the facade, the front part of this mosque.
Фасадная, парадная часть этой мечети.
Все территория мечети.
And this is the entire territory of the mosque? Yes, this part is the covered part of the mosque. And in front of it, there was a huge square which was supposed to accommodate people who came here on Fridays.
Которая должна была вмещать людей, которые приходили сюда по пятницам.
А здесь появляется, значит, резиденция Бердибека.
Here the residence of Berdibek appears. There is a mention that Timur, going on his last trip to China, crossed the Siraya River and settled in the palace of Berdibek. And Berdibek, according to written sources, was a Kipchak. His brother Nuradin was a commander of Timur.
Кипчак. Его брат Нурадин был полководцем у Тимура. Там при раскопках найдены...
During the excavation, ceramic tiles with gilding were found there. There a rarity, chess piece made of ivory was found. And there, typical for the Kipchaks, earrings were found too.
Которые характерны и считаются для кипчаков.
And here are the residential blocks of 13th, 15th centuries. Archaeologists have revealed them this season. Appearing here, you immediately get overwhelmed by thoughts and images of that time. How barefoot children ran in these streets, how women were baking cakes in the stoves, and the smell was spreading all over the neighborhood. How old men hoarsely whispered to each other. However, it turns out that here was located a military town, and most likely, only soldiers' strong language after another battle was heard.
В 13-15 веках, в период, который изучают сейчас археологи, здесь стоял
In the 13th, 15th centuries, a period that is now being studied by archaeologists, here was a garrison right next to the fortress wall. Soldiers drawn their duty and even lived here during the siege. The duty was ongoing, the enemy was standing behind the gate, but the life needed to be continued, even if sometimes it was dangerous. Wow, it flew straight to the feet. Whoa, it's still hot.
горяченький.
А вот здесь вот, кстати, мы в начале раскопок, здесь где-то на метр выше.
And here, by the way, in the course of the excavations, gravel pits were recorded. There is an assumption that at that time these burials were made. It was not possible to go and bury people outside the city in an ordinary city cemetery, since there was an enemy army at that moment.
Так как в этот момент было войско противника.
Есть ли для Отрара определенная норма? Полметра углубления?
Is there a certain norm for Otra? Half a meter depth for an archaeologist means 50 years back in history. It is different in different parts. There is no clear binding. Here in this section we see a depth of just over 5 meters, and in its stratigraphy we see about 8 construction horizons. Each of them can correspond to different ages. Suppose at the top it's 17th or 18th century, half a meter below the 16th century, another meter is the 15th, something like that.
Допустим, полметра ниже, там метр ниже, это уже 16 век. Еще метр 15, вот так вот.
Сделал срез стены высотой 8 метров и наблюдай историю городища.
You can cut a wall 8 meters high and observe the history of the site of ancient settlement in all its glory. Just know how to read it. And what do we see? It is evident that the town had black and white stripes in its fortune. The black belt, which runs throughout the excavation in the residential block, indicates that there was a big fire here. It is more prosaic and not so tragic with the white stripe. There supposedly was a garbage pit, at the bottom of which once, for some purpose, people laid out reeds. This is organic. Let's try further trace the secular events along the wall.
Попытаемся пройтись сквозь вековые события по стене дальше.
И они вот во всех стенах фиксируются.
They are fixed on every wall. Just the sun has dried them. Still everywhere these layers are visible at this level, even there in that direction. In fact, a layer of fire goes along the whole section, meaning that it was a pretty big fire, maybe a block or the district, or maybe the whole town was on fire.
Фиксируются другие общегородские, мы их называем.
Other city fires are also fixed. This is a fire of the 17th century connected with the conquest of the Jungar. This has greatly affected the further history of Otra.
Это очень сказалось на дальнейшей истории Отрара.
Already after the death of Timur, people began to leave Otra and it gradually emptied, began to collapse, turning into ruins. Now restorers make it very attractive for tourists. Masters reconstruct the appearance of the city of the Timurid era. Towers with loopholes, the gate arch and part of the walls have already been restored. The design of the gate remained the same as described in archival documents. There are photos preserved. What do you think? How much does it cost to build a medieval city and how much time will it take? Now nearly 60 million have been spent for 3 years. For how many bricks? For more than 100,000. Each of them costs 300 tenge. How much time will it take for the plant to produce bricks for towers and the entrance lobby? We can produce 1 to 200,000 for a year. A whole year is needed for a modern plant to produce bricks for such a construction? Yes, it's handmade. It takes 15 days to make 450 to 500 bricks. Then what should be said about the ancient builders? Right. In ancient times, city builders worked with filling. Built well if you live in the city, if you want to stay alive.
Город Отрар, его полгода брали монгольские войска.
Mongolian troops were conquering the city of Otra for half a year. History shows that the city was also captured later. Here is the main gate. Today, after the reconstruction, will it withstand the Mongolian siege? How do you think?
Натиск монгольских войск, осаду.
I'll say with certainty that it will. We used only high-quality materials from the bottom to the top, so any siege, catapult, even an earthquake will not destroy it now. What are the Mongols? What are the Jungas opposite to time? The time is now the main enemy of Otrar. It is impossible to be sure of how much will it take to restore the site of the fort and whether it will be possible to save it. And yet the hope remains that in the new old-look Otrar will retain the greatness that delighted the travelers who used to be here in the Middle Ages.